America makes her bid for the Atlantic Blue Ribbon as the biggest and fastest liner built in the United States arrives in New York after a shakedown cruise from Newport News, Virginia. Nosing up the harbor, it receives the traditional marine ovation. The last word in radar equips the masts of the new Sea Queen. Past the Statue of Liberty, the 53,000-ton luxury ship slowly and majestically noses her way up the harbor as flags bedeck her 990-foot length. The huge proportions of the ship become apparent from the bridge, where an official welcome is extended by Mayor Impellitteri of New York to Commodore Harry Manning, who will command the vessel. The liner's speed has been kept a secret, but is known to exceed 32 knots. The vessel's maiden voyage to Europe will be made July 3rd. Meantime, New York's skyline greets America's shipbuilding triumph. She cost $73 million and represents the last word in luxury, and she also represents in her graceful lines Yankee shipbuilding know-how.
If I could get in a time machine, there is only one destination for me, and that would be July 3rd, 1952, noon in New York at Pier 86. I would be aboard that maiden voyage.
In New York, the liner United States is ready for her maiden transatlantic crossing. Mrs. Truman and Treasury Secretary Snyder wish bon voyage to Margaret Truman, Drusy Snyder, and her husband. The president's daughter will make a European tour with her friends. They are embarking on what is to be a record-making trip, for the United States is out to recapture the blue ribbon of the Atlantic.
For those who sailed on her, it will be a day long remembered.
It was very exciting. There were airplanes flying, there were whistles blowing, there were flags all over, there were fire boats out, all spraying, you know, all the whistles and everything. It was very, very exciting.
You just felt the excitement the minute you put your foot on her.
There was live music playing as the ship backed away, and there was the excitement when you started to feel the shudder of the ship under your feet.
The 900-foot ship begins her history-making voyage.
They didn't know, of course, how fast she was going to be.
Would she take the blue ribbon? Would she beat the Queen Mary? Would it be in Yankee hands?
We seemed to know from the start that she was out to break the record, and so there was an air of excitement.
We waited by the radio, and my mom kept saying, no, not yet. I'll let you know when it's close.
As we neared Bishop's Rock off England's coast, our pride in the new First Lady of the Seas mounted with each passing hour. Somehow we knew she would fulfill the role for which she was destined.
You know, it was before we went to the moon, but this was its own moonshot in that day and age.
From the chalk room to the engine room, a glorious effort was being made to prove America's merchant marine supremacy.
It was about 1 or 2 in the morning. Margaret Truman, Drusy Snyder, and about 6 newspaper reporters, full of champagne. So I said, let's all go up to the bridge. Commodore Manning was at the wheel. He said, Miss Truman, we're about to break the record. Would you like to put your finger on the wheel? She very sweetly said, let Laura do it. So I put my finger on the wheel, and he said, now get out of here. I had my finger on the wheel for 1 second. That's right.
We literally screamed with delight when the news flashed. SS United States smashes the Queen Mary's record.
A trip in which she shaves 10 hours and 2 minutes off the record of the Queen Elizabeth, making the crossing in 3 days and 10 hours, an average of 41 miles an hour. America regains a proud heritage on the high seas.
About 4,000 people have grandstand seats for the big entrance. In the last 100 years, it has been broken 29 times. By the Americans, by the British, the Germans, the Italians, the French, and now by America again.
The news was flashed around the world. Headlines in Dublin, London, Rome, Stockholm, Copenhagen, Brussels, Geneva. For the first time in almost 100 years, an American ship flying the American flag had regained the transatlantic speed record.
And they made it in just a little over 3.5 days. I can't imagine what happened in the home offices of the Cunard Line.
So fast that the speed of the water sandblasted the paint from her bow. The captain of the Queen Mary had sent a telegram to the captain of the United States saying, well, this proves that your girls really are faster than ours.
Heading westward now, bound for New York. This time, everybody suspected the United States was going to try to capture the record westbound too.
A new queen has been crowned. She is the liner United States, which holds a double Atlantic blue ribbon for speed. The $73 million luxury speedster makes the east-west crossing in 3 days and 12 hours from England to Ambrose Lightship, cutting 9 hours from the record held by the Queen Mary for 13 years. A royal welcome awaits the new monarch in New York Harbor as she steams to her berth. Sleek, streamlined, and trim, she completes the 2,900-mile run with an average of almost 40 land miles an hour, with a hint from her officers that she had plenty in reserve. President Franklin of the United States Lines and Grover Whalen congratulate Commodore Harry Manning, the skipper, on bringing back to America the Atlantic laurels for the first time in 100 years. A clean sweep for America's new Queen of the Seas.
It smashed the record, this time by as much as 10 hours.
The race was over. We were back in New York, and we'd brought home the bacon.
On her return to New York City, nearly everyone seemed to turn out to see the sleek new ship glide into the harbor with a fireboat and huge harbor craft escort. Her owners were awarded the Hales Trophy, symbolic of the blue ribbon of the Atlantic, and her crew paraded up Broadway for the traditional hero's homecoming.
And that was a great symbol of national pride for the country who held the blue riband. That's at a time when these things actually mattered.
The United States sailed from July 3rd of 1952 until November 7th of 1969.
When she went in for an overhaul was the summer 1969.
Like in the movie King Kong, the man said, "Looks like the airplanes got him." I guess the airplanes got the great passenger ships.
She was withdrawn from service because of the urging of the United States Lines.
The famous jet came along in October 1958, ubiquitous silver tube, and stole it and made it to 6 hours instead of 5 days. So one by one, American passenger ships were being pulled out of service. The government, which often subsidized these ships, was realizing that in future aircraft would probably move military troops and cargo.
And then ultimately in 1969, in November, she arrived in New York, disembarked her passengers. She was to go to Virginia for her annual overhaul.
And when she got down there, United States Lines finally made the decision to pull the plug. They dropped the paintbrushes into the paint cans. The beds were left unmade. Everything was just stopped. They hermetically sealed her, dehumidified her, and that's the way she sat for years and years and years.
And they had no idea that they had sailed the last voyage of the SS United States.
It's very sad when the United States was no longer in service.
When I had children of my own, I became more curious, as people often do, about my family legacy. And so, I literally just logged onto the computer one night, and to my shock, really, there she was. So we traveled to Philadelphia, and as we were sort of heading south down Columbus Boulevard, in the distance, I saw these two huge funnels. She looked nothing like the pictures I'd seen on the internet of this gleaming beacon with the bright red, white, and blue funnels. But there was something about her, tied up with all of these lines, and you just really had the sense that she could pop those lines. There was still a sense of power there. I was encouraged that she'd lasted that long.
The irony is that right there in Philadelphia, in the home of the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall, the birthplace of this great nation, they don't know what that ship is.
I know it's pretty big. It just says United States on there.
Looks like it was a cruise ship.
She's been forgotten, and I think that needs to change.
It's bigger than the Titanic. That's a big surprise.
And they have no idea that this massive ship that's sitting there is the SS United States, our nation's flagship, one of the crowning maritime achievements of the 20th century, if not the crowning maritime achievement.
I pass by it every year. They're sailing in my boat. And each year to watch it get rustier, dirtier, wind was broken out of it.
And I saw the condition that she's in now. A cry just came out of my throat. It was just of sadness.
It was tear-jerking to see it just going to pieces and nobody caring.
She strains at her mooring lines. She's still floating. She moves. And it's as if she's trying to go back out to sea.
Seeing all the portholes that have been vandalized and it choked me up, there's no doubt.
I try to imagine what William Francis Gibbs would think if he saw this today. I mean, where is the spirit of St. Louis? It's hanging in the Smithsonian. Where is Eli Whitney's cotton gin? It's been preserved.
A ship of that quality, of all of the innovations that it had, of all of the history that it created in its very short term of life as a working vessel, it didn't deserve that kind of treatment.
Why has this ship that was such a magnificent achievement in its time, why has it been allowed to decay like this?
This is a crime against shipbuilding, a crime against history.
The way she looks today makes me feel very sad. The paint peeling and all, but she still has a dignity about her that she'll never lose.
It's definitely a little sad and upsetting just because it's so rusting and almost decaying, but at least I know it's still here. It could be much worse off and could not even be here. So hopefully in the near future we'll be able to restore it and bring it back to almost what it was.
I want to see her brought back to her place in history, and I want school kids to know what that ship is and why it's really, really cool.
It's a piece of history we shouldn't let die.